It's time. Hello, and welcome to Into the Liminal Abyss Paranormal Podcast. I am your show host, Shetan Noir, and today I am actually talking with another podcast host. I'm talking to Shane from the Shadows Podcast. Did I get that right?
From the Shadows Podcast.
Yep. From the Shadows Podcast. So
from the Shadows Podcast.
Yep, all one title. Podcast is there in the title. So, Shane, what's your background and what got you into the paranormal?
Well, it's an interesting story, I would say. I think I'm probably like, most of the people of this generation. I don't want to say how old or young I am, but I'm pretty old. But I'm still kind of young, I think. At least I try to think. As I was growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, I was the kid who, if I'm the only one that did this, then shame on me. But, at school, you get the old thing on Fridays where you could order books, at school, weekly, the Scholastic Weekly Reader stuff.
Yep.
And, you go home and, Mom, I want the book on UFOs or the Loch Ness Monster or Ghost or Bigfoot. And, I just devoured. I mean, because, God, kids these days, they would, of course, maybe they're sort of getting a taste of it now with us all being sheltering at home. Of what it was like to really have to find ways to entertain yourself. And,
right.
Reading, gosh, that might even be a foreign term to some of these kids, was a great way of, entertaining yourself. Growing up in Podunk, middle of nowhere, Ohio, you'd read these stories about these, the Pacific Northwest and, Bigfoot and then the UFOs and the Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm. And they usually came in one book and there was like a chapter on each one of them. I remember those books.
I still have those books.
Yeah, they are.
Now I'm not allowed to have them out. But someday I will. Someday I will get them out of storage and put them on my bookcase in my office.
Oh, that's what my bookcases are filled with is everything from paranormal and UFOs to cryptozoology. I've got several bookcases full of books like that.
Oh, I know. I mean, and you were so kind of limited in that day, except for whatever the library had.
Or Fate magazine.
Your local library.
Or Fate magazine, because if you got a subscription to that, you thought you were pretty good because you were getting a monthly it was either monthly or bi-monthly. You were getting it was a small magazine, but it was chocked full of everything that you wanted to read about for paranormal and cryptids.
Yeah, sadly, I didn't have that. The only thing I had access to that supplemented the books was the Weekly World News.
Okay.
So I like to joke for $1 a week in the checkout line at the grocery store with my parents. My childhood was filled with Wolf Boy, Bat Boy.
Yep.
I married a Bigfoot, or I was taken aboard the alien spacecraft and taught how to, talk telepathically or something. but I just love that stuff, and always, just devoured everything we could, and then you had like the TV shows In Search of, and
yes.
That's Incredible.
Yep.
And all that. And so that was always something that it just really intrigued me. But of course, when growing up in that generation, that was all just nonsense. That was just nonsense. That you couldn't believe in that stuff. There was no way that stuff happened. There was no way that you could, it just wasn't real. It was all fantasy. Which now, as I got older and I look back and see my parents, my grandparents, as they were growing up, all the crazy stuff that happened in the 40s and 50s with UFOs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like you thought, man, they were exposed to a lot of cool stuff. Why didn't they entertain my nonsense any more than what they did? But so fast forward, like I said, where we grew up, it wasn't something that really kind of was something that anybody was into, especially where we were in Ohio. And so I would say, like, the thing that got us, the podcast that I'm on, okay, that we founded and I'm a co-host, the genesis for that was something that happened when I was in high school. And the unique thing is on our podcast, we have a guy that we call the Judge. Okay.
Okay.
Well, the funny thing is, he really is a judge. He is a judge here where we live in Ohio. We've been friends since first grade, really good friends. And there was something that happened to him when we were in high school. That something was, he was out running, and we joke because if it happened today, he'd be dead and he wouldn't have been alive to tell the story. But back then, he was in good shape because we were in high school and he could actually run. And he was out running one night down an old country road, and something was keeping pace with him in the cornfield. Okay, so where we grew up, the first thing you think is maybe it's a deer, or maybe and this is how funny, maybe a really crazy thought was maybe it was a coyote.
Okay.
Because even those weren't as prevalent as they are today. And whatever it was, just kept pace with him far enough inside the cornfield that he couldn't see it. And you got to keep in mind, this is like, around midnight, he's out jogging. And it's this whole ordeal where he has to make this decision. What's he going to do when he gets to the end of the road and the cornfield ends? Because he figures out, look, whatever's in there is not just some wild animal. Okay. And so, he tells, the story is he gets to the end of the road and he makes a decision not to go left to this major highway that runs straight up and down through Ohio where we're at, but he takes a right away from his house to one of our other friends' house and to escape whatever it is. Okay. Now, when this happened, when we were in high school, I remember the next day we were all together. He's telling the story, but there was part of the story he didn't tell us back then when we were in high school because he thought we would just totally make fun of it. Okay. And I wouldn't have I was still, even though I'm in high school and I'm checking out girls more than I'm checking out Bigfoot at this point, I would have still been like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Well, fast forward to 30 years later, and we're adults, and he and I have written probably 7 or 8 different screenplays, okay, but scripts for scary/horror movies, because we know some people in the industry, and they're always, hey, you got any good ideas or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's then as we're doing some research and stuff for some ideas, he comes across a Dogman story.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I knew this would get your attention. Okay. And he, the judge he had grown up in a house where his dad, we always heard this tale. His dad was the seventh son of a seventh son. And so he had some ability, he could see, or at least that's what they always told us, he could see spirits, he could see different things, he sensed different things. And the judge grew up kind of that same way. And then as we got older and got married and had kids, there were some crazy things that happened to him that we would talk about. Okay. But then when he came across this dog man story, he kind of pulls me aside and he goes, look, I figured out what it was in that cornfield. And I go, okay. All this time we were all thinking it was a deer or whatever. Cause like I said, we'd heard this story for years. It was a fun story for him to tell or whatever. Well, the part he didn't tell us at the time was that when he got out onto the main highway and took a right, he glanced over his shoulder behind him and saw what he described was a creature standing on two legs that looked like the Egyptian god Anubis in the face. And he goes, I know now, I saw what they call a dog man. And I was like, what are you, why didn't you say this at the time? He's like, well, what would you have said to me as a 16-year-old? He goes, you just told me I was crazy. I go, well, yeah, probably. He goes, that's why I didn't say anything. And he goes, and that is why people don't say stuff about experiences like that, because, your best friend going to tell you they're crazy, tell you you're crazy. What's the average Joe down the street going to say? They're going to say worse.
Right. Yeah.
And so he actually then told his story. He started really digging in to the whole, what happened to him. And he told his story on a couple really big podcasts, like Shannon LaGrove's Into the Fray. And and on another guy, I think the guy's passed away. I can't think of the guy's name, but he was big into the dog man thing. And so we got to talking, and we're like, we've all had some different paranormal experiences. I haven't had a dog man chase me down through a field, thank God. But, we just kind of talked like, it'd be kind of, why don't we invite people to come on to our, we'll start a podcast. How hard could it be? Right? You can laugh at that. How hard can it be? Because it's not easy. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of homework and trial and error.
Yeah. It's just kind of like, well, how many other people out there have had experiences that they were afraid to talk about? I listen to, podcasts all the time while I'm working, where people are, thankful that there's a forum for them to tell their story and have people to listen and share their experience with. And that's kind of that's exactly what happened. We started the podcast, and the next thing you know, there's people from our area, people we've known our whole lives, that are coming up, and I'm painting you the picture. They come up and they tug on your shirt sleeve.
Yep.
Hey, you got a second? Can I talk to you about something? And then next thing you know, 15 minutes later, your hair's standing on end after they've told you about how their house is haunted, or how they know somebody that has a Bigfoot in their woods, and this is why they got and we've come to realize, which I'm sure you know, is that almost everybody either has had a paranormal experience or knows somebody who's had a paranormal experience.
Oh yeah.
And I think the thread that binds everybody together is they just want to know more. They just want some validation to know they're not crazy. That this stuff really, really happens. And I think the validation then for the judge is the first show he was on, and then Shannon LeGros show, some people emailed the show asking to have them get put in touch with the judge. And they were people from our area who, back in the 80s, when he had this experience, also experienced stuff in our area that was similar. And I think that was what kind of is like, hey, look, now he really knows he wasn't crazy, because other people were experiencing, whether they saw red eyes in the fence row or their dogs, were going crazy the road over from where he had. Just different people reaching out that just kind of tied it all together. And so that's in a nutshell how we started the podcast. Is an experience he had when we were in high school that lived with him and that I had heard about, that just kind of said, somehow he kept researching, figured out what it was, and we just said, okay, let's do it for our area. Now, of course, we'd like to have a national audience, and I think we do to an extent, but we really are reaching people in North Central Ohio that feel comfortable coming to us and telling us their story, especially because he's, like I said, he's a judge.
Right.
Like everybody in the area knows he's doing the podcast. Like we don't advertise his name beyond that because, he just feels like, it's, of course, I think he likes to be called the judge anyway.
Well, that is a pretty cool title. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I don't have a cool title, but so that's just kind of how we kind of, that's how we got into it. Is he got an experience validated, and we just decided we wanted to kind of give people a place where they could come and tell us their experiences. People that trusted us because they've known us ever since we were kids, and I think that's an important aspect when you can go tell somebody that you maybe, and I'm really putting a lot of faith in the people that I'm friends with that respect. I don't know if anybody respects, but people that respect you as a person know that you can relate to something that they've had happen to them that just may seem crazy. Okay. But I'm just going to throw it out there. As crazy as some of this other stuff sounds, if you'd have told me that, in the year 2020, we'd all be locked down to our houses basically because of a virus was attacking the country, and, you had to wash your hands every 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And, that's science fiction.
Right.
5 years ago, that's science fiction.
That's one of those. This is a great movie. Yeah, this is one of those like dystopian, teen novels that where, like the, sectioning off society and okay, you guys,
Mm-hmm.
fight for your medical supplies, and it's just like, yeah, I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you just thought you're nuts. That's not going to happen. We're America.
Right.
The world's beyond that. We have the internet. What are you talking about? How could we have a virus that just is running rampant throughout the world and killing some? I mean, it's a work of science fiction, but it's here.
Right.
It's happening.
Right.
And so it's no more crazy than having somebody say, this happened to me. I saw this in the sky, or this was in the backyard, or I saw that while I was hunting, or, I woke up and this was, standing in the corner of my room. Suddenly that stuff all seems that much more plausible.
Yeah. Well, like one of the things that I find interesting, and I talk about this all the time on my podcast and with people just when I'm, talking paranormal or cryptids or whatever, to me, it's normal to talk about these experiences, and because everybody I know has had some type of paranormal or UFO or Bigfoot or Dogman experience. What's abnormal is somebody who completely denies it and says, nope, 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 nope. I've never heard of that. That, that stuff's fake. And it's like, to me, that's weird. That is abnormal. Because in today's day and age, if you've made it to, like, however old you are, I'm going to say 18 years or older, and you haven't had any type of paranormal experience, whether it's, been because of ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot. If you haven't had one of these experiences, then there's something weird going on with you. I mean, it's,
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I see what you're saying, because that's your normal, that's your normal. You're normal, and that's, I believe everybody wants that to be their normal, is that everything's just, I got up, I went to work, I came home, I had dinner, we watched TV, we went to the ball game, and that's it. But the more you check things out and you investigate stuff for yourself and talk to people, you realize that what's normal really isn't. Gosh, am I going to date myself by saying it's not really Leave It to Beaver type of?
Well, no, because I think if I'm picking up on the references right, I'm thinking we're probably about the same age set. So I
only watch Leave It to Beaver in reruns. Okay. I'm just going to tell you that. But no, so that's, and I will say it has been very fulfilling, okay, to get to talk to people and have them feel better about having somebody to talk to. And I have people that contact me totally off the record. People that I never in a million years would have thought of. Okay, parents of some of my best friends who, they were the ones saying, "Oh, you guys are nuts. You guys, behave. Don't listen to that." The straight and narrow parent.
Yep.
And then they're getting a hold of me saying, "Okay, I got to tell you this. I got to get it off my chest." Like, whoa! But you can't tell anybody.
Right.
But so it's like, okay, I get it. I totally get it. They're not, and they'll say, "I'm not ready to tell people," because they don't want to have a perception about them that they're weird or crazy. But like you said, you're to the point where you have seen enough and lived through enough that you think that's weird if you deny it.
And I think that the older generations, like my parents' age and older, they had that mindset back, when if they did say something, oh, hey, we have a ghost in our house or something, people were very negative about it and, accusatory of, oh, you just want attention. But now with the newer generations, and it's such, I don't want to say people do it for attention, but the paranormal, I mean, you flip on Travel Channel or Animal Planet, and they have a show on almost every night about cryptozoology or the paranormal or UFOs. Even like the History Channel has shows about UFOs. So in today's day and age, I think it's much more topic appropriate or subject appropriate, to talk about experiences that you've had, because then you have something in common with other people. Whereas if you just deny it, it's like, well, what are you going to do? Just talk about football? I mean,
well, and I mean, anybody that doesn't know anything about the entertainment business, I'll clue them in. That stuff wouldn't be on TV if people weren't watching it.
Right.
And you're right. Think about this. Professional football and professional sports are the most popular things on television probably right now. Or they were, okay? But people really, when it comes down to it, have so little in common with what a professional athlete does.
Right.
Versus versus somebody who's gone out hiking listening for wood knocks. Okay, because everybody can go out hiking. Not everybody can go catch a pass, from a professional athlete.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's just and I'm a diehard Browns fan. I know what it feels like to be a loser in my regular life, so I do know what it feels like sometimes to play for the
Well,
Browns.
hey, I sympathize because I'm from Michigan and we have the Detroit Lions. So I always tell
I
them,
won't even bring up Ohio State, Michigan.
yeah,
Okay, I won't even bring that up.
that's why when people ask me what my teams are, uh, Crimson Tide from Alabama. That's my college team. Love them to bits, and then I usually go with the Steelers for my pro team.
Oh, oh, you might as well be a Michigan fan as to be a Steelers fan.
I
It's like the
know,
same thing.
but at least they win more games than the Lions do.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Uh, so yeah, so that's, and I enjoy like getting on to other people's podcasts and listening and hearing, I really enjoy like Sasquatch Chronicles. Anybody who thinks that there is no possibility of a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, go listen to that show one time. Okay, there is men who I am listening to on that show who are military, police officers, telling stories, and they're admitting they're scared to death. Okay? So you talk about nothing to gain about going on and telling your story other than just to feel like you finally got something off your chest, the weight of the world off your chest. That to me is the proof, all the proof you need.
Oh,
if
yeah.
somebody's willing to come forward and say, I don't care what you said. This is what happened. This is what happened. So, I mean, it's enough that I don't want to go out traipsing around in the woods looking for Bigfoot. I don't want to, as much as I love to talk about it, doesn't mean I want to go out there and actually come face to face. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not going to. Or a dog. I mean, the judge is still to this day, and you can go to 4 different podcasts he's been on, including ours, to tell the story, and he will tell you he still looks over his shoulders 40-some years or 30-some years later because of what happened one night, when he was 16, 17 years old. I mean, explain that to me. How stuff. I don't even remember what I did last week. Okay, let alone remember something. Imagine how burned into your memory something and frightening it has to be to where every day you still are looking over your shoulders.
And that seems to be a reoccurring thing with any type of experience people have with the paranormal or UFOs or cryptids. You always remember those encounters, and it's I don't know if it's because it's a traumatic experience, but I still remember to this day when my family, just like a lot of families, we were big into camping when we were kids. When like from, I would say, 8 to 10 years old, and we did it all of my childhood. But I still remember to this day, and I talk about it a lot. We went to a campground, and I don't know if you remember seeing the Patterson Gimlin film or the Legend of Boggy Creek movie for the first time. But when I saw those 2 movies, we were at a campground, camping in a tent and a camper truck. And let me set the scene for you. This was a campground that was here in Michigan. But one of the interesting things that they had a crystal clear lake that we would go fishing into. But also at this campground, they had a full-grown alligator in a dog kennel.
Okay.
So as a young child, you're seeing a live alligator in a dog pen. You believe anything's real. You know, when you go, your dad's like, let's go fishing. And we're like, not in that rowboat. No, there's alligators. No, 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 Dad, there's an alligator. They have it in the pen. So imagine you're a young child and it's movie night. So everybody's excited. And that's the two movies that they're showing. The Patterson-Gimlin film and The Legend of Boggy Creek.
That is so wrong for those people that own that campground.
And here you are, you're this young impressionable child that fully believes that these things are out there in the woods now because you have an alligator that's alive and living here at the campground. So, going from where they were showing the movies to the public restroom, and I was like, I'm not leaving this restroom. And I was all by myself. Like, my parents and my brothers were either back at the movie place or at the camper now. And I'm like, I'm not leaving this bathroom. Nope, one of those things is going to come out of the woods and grab me, and that's it. And so two older ladies actually, they first took me back to where the movie was, and of course my family wasn't there. So then we had to find the camper trailer at night in the dark. And it was just like, I still remember that to this day.
You mean you couldn't use your cell phone with the light on it to find your... Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was way before that, But I still remember that. And even though wasn't seeing, an actual Bigfoot, just the fact that those two films existed. Now we know that Patterson-Gimlin is a real, creature that they filmed, and then The Legend of Boggy Creek, the movie that they made off that was somebody in a suit. But still, they showed these films back to back, and I'm sure I'm not the only child who saw those movies and thought, oh my God, I'm never going outside in the dark again.
Well, either it was very evil of the people to do that sort of thing, or it was genius because it kept you kids inside the tents and the campers and not out messing around at the campground at night after everybody was supposed to be in bed.
Right.
So
right.
Maybe it was genius on their part.
It could have been, or it could have been just, hey, look at this, these two movies that we got. Let's show them. And I was fascinated by it. I still am, but that left a permanent mark, I still remember it to this day. And it's almost like I'm watching from outside my body, my turmoil of, I'm not leaving this bathroom of, ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just pull the truck up, I'll get in, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I think you've hit, that's the nail right on the head right there is when you experience something like that, whether in your case, more of it was perceived than actually happening, it sticks with you. It sticks with you, and it's a part of your life forever, and you never know what's gonna, trigger it. So, and here's the thing is, I think the judge at some point had just probably thought, maybe it was just a deer. Okay, maybe I didn't really see what I thought I saw. Okay. I mean, I think maybe at some point he thought that. Okay. But then I think once his, what he did see was, corroborated with somebody else who had seen something like that and used those, because that was what triggered him was somebody said they saw what looked like the Egyptian god Anubis. And he's like, oh my God, that's exactly what I saw. So it all came rushing back. And it's helped him, to be honest, to have a place where he can just tell a story. I know it's helped him. It doesn't make it any better. It's not like he wants to go out and run up and down the road anymore.
Right.
But it just, to know that there's other people. Because let's face it, a shared experience, whether it's frightening or good, is much better than a experience that just happens to yourself. If you can share it with somebody, you know, I think it's a lot better. Not necessarily great, because getting chased by a dog man would not be. I mean, that's like, anybody wants to go out and look for a dog man, let me know how it works out.
Yeah,
I'm not going out looking for,
Yeah, and the hard part is sometimes you don't know which one you're going to run into, whether it's Dogman or Bigfoot. But from what I've heard from other researchers, um, once a Dogman moves into an area, all the Bigfoots leave. So there's something about the Dogman is a more aggressive apex predator, and the Bigfoots won't mess with them. They do not want to deal with them.
Wow. See, just something tells me that there's a little bit more to the whole Dogman thing. That there may be an aspect to them that is beyond just the flesh and blood. That they might have a little bit extra kick to what makes them up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they just seem to have a little bit more. How would you say it? Supernatural leaning to what they're all about. I mean,
and you're not the only one. A lot of people think that with Bigfoots, they are a natural occurring species. They are somewhere on the primate family tree. We just don't know where to stick them yet. But with the Dogman, there's nothing like them in the fossil records. Canines developed into walking on four legs, and they have a pack type behavior. And then all of a sudden we start getting reports of these other upright walking bipedal creatures that have long ears, that have snouts, that have tails, and do not look like a ape at all. They look like a dog, and they are much more predatory, but they're there 1 second and they're gone the next.
Yeah, there's nothing about them that makes a whole lot of sense as far as being logical and trying to, for lack of a better term, reverse engineer of where they may have come from.
Right.
Okay, you can wrap your mind around. Okay, Bigfoot is, we know that there was Gigantopithecus that roamed the earth and was probably here at the same time when modern, what we think of as modern man, and so you can wrap your mind around. Okay, we know that they walk the earth, and that could be a reasonable explanation as to, they're somewhere in, what we're seeing as Bigfoot or Sasquatch is somewhere in between. But there's no hey, back in France, back in the 1300s, dogs walked on their hind legs.
Right.
And they, maybe they stowed aboard the ship, one of the ships that came over and, started their own. No, there's nothing like that.
No, there.
Other than if you go back to the, Egyptian beliefs and the stuff that they, what they worshiped, and you go to Anubis. That's right. It. That's the beginning of dogs and Snoopy. I should say Snoopy. Okay. but somehow I don't think Snoopy would really be all that scary.
No, Snoopy is so cute and sweet. But something that I just thought about is, so if you go back to the Egyptian gods with Anubis, there are in different mythologies around the world an upright walking dog creature. So a lot of people think like that the Egyptian cultures, the ancient South American cultures, that there was some type of alien race that was influencing them. And what if these dogmen type creature are descendants of that initial race, and it was just one of the species of aliens that these ancient cultures were interacting with, and they have somehow given their technology in the past to the human race, and now they're using it just to come and go from our world as they please.
Think about how bad that would really suck for an alien so superior to us to have to be running around in the woods and the cornfield chasing around animals and humans to eat them. You know, you can. I mean, I'd be mad too if I was one of them and they said, "Oh, hey, this is part of your initiation into adulthood. We're going to leave you in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and you gotta eat somebody." And we're like, "What? I gotta eat?" I mean, we can fly, we can interdimensional space travel.
Right.
We built the pyramids. We did this, and I gotta eat. I gotta chase down somebody and eat them. Well,
yeah.
That's the way.
Or what if it's that race's way of punishing individuals? Individuals of the culture. Is you get banished for a certain period of time into, our dimension, and you have to, I think that would be a very brutal punishment, for a superior race. You send them to another dimension, and the humans are the superior beings. And
I like that. I like that. I may steal that.
Okay.
for a script. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, go ahead.
All disclosure. I may just steal. I like that idea.
I was on a podcast last year about this time, and the podcast, they did role playing games, like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, and the questions asked in the podcast were, how could you incorporate cryptozoology into these podcasts? And I'm giving them all these ideas, and one of my ideas, which I might write a book on, was in a different dimension, that the creatures that we call cryptids are normal, and they dominate the earth, and the humans are the lower species. But the humans decide that they're going to rebel, and some of the smarter humans develop diseases that will kill the larger cryptids, like rabies, like distemper, and it becomes a plague on that planet. And then the humans, because it starts affecting, because now they can't eat, because obviously it's killing off all the animals, they come to this planet. And so a couple of the cryptid creatures from that planet come and follow them to this planet, and they're trying to stop them from doing the same thing on this planet. So that was just, that was a story idea that I came up with, of how you could incorporate that into a role-playing game and, have a storyline with it.
That's like a 10 book, like 500-page book, like 10 of those. Like, that's a huge, like, anthology of like, that you should just start writing right now. I mean, that would be like one of those, like a 20-part series on Netflix, the Rise of the Humans or something,
Yeah. Yeah, the main character was going to be a dog man who was on his planet. He was the equivalent of a high-ranking detective, and he was pursuing the scientists who created, helped be a part of creating all these diseases, and had samples of the viruses and diseases that he was bringing to our planet, to try to wipe out the Sasquatch and the Dogman and stuff like that are living here.
I love it. That's fantastic. I love it. That's great. That is great. And see, the more you start thinking about that, and the stuff that you have heard about and know people have experienced, nothing seems out of the realm of
No,
possibility.
it doesn't, because I mean, what's to say that there, we take our everyday lives and we think, this is the end all be all. There's, yes, we have paranormal encounters. There's reports of UFOs, and we know that there has to be something else out there living in the universe. But what we don't realize is we might be in a mirror reality where just on the other side of our perception of where, life, ends and stops, there could be a whole nother us on the other side of that that's living a completely different life. And there might be several different versions of us as a person in different dimensions. And we just understand and we know what works in this dimension.
I really want to get into that one dimension where I'm a lot better looking. I think that would be great. Just be really good looking for a little bit, So if I can find that dimension where I had a better nose, maybe some better hair, I'm all for it.
But there are endless possibilities out there of what is beyond our acceptance or our perceived notions of what life is.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I will say, the more excuse me, the more people that we've talked to and I've gotten to know that are into the spirit, ghost hunting sort of, that's their realm. I mean, it really opens your mind and your eyes up to like what is beyond where we're living in right now. It kind of really blows your mind a little bit about how kind of trapped we are here on Earth in our human form. When you really start talking to some of these people and the stuff they've experienced, and I don't know. Sometimes it just it really blows your mind. You just got to sit down and say, what's around me right now that I can't see or touch or feel or sense, but that is actually there.
Right.
It just so that not that everybody listening doesn't think, man, this guy's lame. He didn't get chased by a dog man, or he didn't, Bigfoot didn't terrorize his house. I mean, I'll tell an experience that I had that deals in this sort of what do we know is happening around us and what don't we know? Okay. So my day job, what am I kidding? My real job is I'm a mailman. I deliver mail. Okay. And, which is really a boring job, except for this time of what we're going through in society. I feel like I'm at the front lines, not quite, like a doctor or nurse or anything, but, we're, putting ourselves out there, it's kind of dangerous right now. But, on a normal day, if a dog chases you, and not a dog man, I'm just talking like a dog.
Right.
If a dog chases you, something dog spray will actually work on. I don't think dog spray will work on the dog. But there was a day, I don't know, it's been 5-6 years ago now. I was the last carrier coming in off the route. And if you can imagine, our post office it's an old building, and the clerks had through the years, been there quite a while, through the years had always said, hey, we're here at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning by ourselves throwing mail, and we'll hear stuff. Okay, we'll hear like the one clerk said that they were on the other side of the room, and when you walk into the post office from the lobby, you can throw mail into a tub through a slot that then they'll take and mail for you.
Right.
Like where
Yep.
So the clerk said, we got there that morning, and the clerk's like, I'm on the other side. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden, it sounded like somebody had walked into the lobby and put like 200 letters through the mail slot. And they would just all came flying through the mail slot and into the canvas cart. And the clerk said they walked over there and, oh man, what is it? There wasn't anything in the can, nothing. So then immediately they're scared to death. It's like,
Right,
okay, what
right.
just happened? All right. So there's always like, clerks always were staying because they were the ones there by themselves or just another clerk, and stuff would show itself or appear. Okay, not like so they could see it, but they could feel it and hear it. So this is a Saturday, and I'm the last carrier back. And no mailman that's listening, I try to be the last guy back. There's no reward for being first. And so I'm walking in. Now, I walk into these big back doors. Our post office is a great big room. And around the outside of the room are all like our mail cases. And in the middle of the room was our supervisor's desk. And so I'm pushing my cart in, walking right out past me is the truck driver, the guy who comes from Cleveland to pick up our mail and take it back up to the distribution center. And I look to the center of the room, and there is our supervisor. She's sitting there at the desk doing some paperwork. And beside is a girl, 12, 13 years old, I guess, maybe younger, 9, 10. The girl standing there and smiles at me. I smile at the girl. She nods her head, and I nod my head. And I go and go to my case and start messing with my mail. Now, I didn't think anything of. Usually there's not like kids running around in the post office.
Right.
Okay? But just the night before, one of the other carriers she had 2 daughters, and they were there late. As she was getting ready to leave, they had showed up with the husband or whatever, and they had somewhere to go. Okay, because it's not something we don't let kids run around. But that later, and that supervisor, she had a young daughter who would have been the same age as what I supposed this girl, and I had never met the daughter. They didn't like live right there, so I just thought, maybe that was her daughter. So I'm sitting there and I'm getting my mail ready, and I usually kids aren't well behaved, so I figured, why isn't this kid saying something? So I lean out and I go, hey, where's your daughter at? And the supervisor looks up at me and she goes, what are you talking about? I go, well, your daughter. She was just standing right there by your desk. Where's she at? She goes, Shane, you're thinking of last night when, I won't say her name, when her kids were here. And I go, no. I said, there was a girl standing right there beside the desk where you're sitting, like 2 feet from you. I smiled at her, and she smiled at me, and her face goes white. And she goes, there's nobody but me or you here. And I go, oh, okay. And so obviously she didn't see what I saw, and she could have reached out and touched what I thought was a person.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to tell you I saw a ghost, because I saw a person standing there. And I wouldn't have known there wasn't a person standing there if I hadn't asked. Okay? So there obviously wasn't a person standing there, a kid or whatever. But I know there was. I mean, I saw the little girl. She smiled at me. Is that what's running around in the post office in the morning making no? I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
It always led me to then wonder, because we had a guest on our show. He runs the Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center, and he has a couple of the best ghost stories I've ever heard. But he had an incident where, or two, as a matter of fact, just like that. Okay, where if you didn't ask somebody, you'd have just assumed you were interacting with a person. You know, he had actual interactions, words with these entities or ghosts or whatever. I mean, I just nodded my head, but we made eye contact.
Right.
I would have never known that she was not there. So it leads me to, and I've asked people who are mediums and stuff. I said, so how often are we somewhere? And I'll throw out like Cedar Point. That's some place where I'm sure you're familiar with Cedar Point,
yes.
being from
Yeah.
Michigan.
Went there lots in my childhood. I don't think I've been back there since I turned 25. So
Okay. Well,
it's been a while.
but my point is, Cedar Point at any given time has what, 10,000
Oh
people
yeah,
probably running around.
easily.
So if you just sat down on the bench, how many of those, and you can't see my air quotes, people walking by, skipping by, running by, whatever, how many of them aren't really there?
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, how many of those are not really people that we just, for whatever reason, see as people? Because now it's apparent to me that a spirit or a ghost or whatever isn't necessarily some shadow figure or something in white or just something that makes noises or moves stuff around. I think you can see them as people because that's what they were.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, that just always made me think. Now, okay, who am I walking by that's not really here? And you're never going to know,
right?
Unless you're in a situation where you ask for whatever reason, So, and which is funny is a guy who's a supervisor now at the post office. He had something happen to him about a month and a half ago, and I'm out on the route. He sends me a text and he goes, "You're not going to believe this." No, I wasn't even working. I was already home because he was the last. He had gone back in after we were closed, and he was looking for something. Okay, he was. I want to say it was like a round rubber seal for one of our mail trucks. It was, and I don't know what the seal was for, but it was a rubber, big round. There was, it's a ring, like a rubber ring, but it was probably 6 inches across or whatever. And he's looking for it. He thought he had taken it home because he had something to do with it. So he comes back to the post office all by himself. The post office is closed, and he's looking all over for it. Around his desk, and his desk is out on the workroom floor, same as this other girl's was. And he gets down, and this is what he's texting. So he's texting me this, and then I had to call him because he may not want to admit it, but he was pretty scared. He crawled down to look under the desk, thinking that maybe this thing had fallen down and got kicked under the desk. And he said while he's down there on all fours looking under the desk, he hears what sounds like just something splat on the floor, and he can see it then out of the corner of his eye, bounce up in the air. And when he turns, laying flat on the floor is this, excuse me, I'm getting choked up, but not a bad way. Is this rubber seal. And it's not rigid. Okay. It's not something you could throw and it would, in one big rigid thing, hit the ground and bounce up.
Right.
It's flimsy, flexible. And when he saw it, he stood up. He's like, well, where did that come from? You know, even if it had somehow been on the desk and he'd missed it and it fell off the desk, it wouldn't have acted the way it did. So he tried to throw it down. It wouldn't work. It was then he realized, I'm getting out of here. Sorry about that. Holy moly.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
And so he goes, what was that? Like he's asking me, like, because we have a podcast about.
Yeah, yep. You are the you are the go-to expert.
I go, I don't have any idea what that was. I said, did you stick around and look? And he goes, no, I didn't stick around. I laughed as fast as I could and called you. Oh man, excuse me.
Oh, no problem.
So there's something going on at our post office, I would have to say, but I don't know what it is. It doesn't seem, to be, it's not like I don't believe there was an old house that got torn down and the post office in the 30s got built over top. I don't have any idea.
It would be interesting.
I don't know why.
It would be interesting
but I don't
to see.
I don't think the post office is going to let us do a ghost hunt.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to see what the ground underneath it holds. If it has lots of quartz, or if there's water that runs underneath of it, and see if there's anything that could attract and keep residual energy there, because it sounds kind of like you have a intelligent haunting, but you also have like a residual that the sound of the mail coming through the chute, because that happens all day. You have to think that somehow ingrains into like the brick and the stone, and it basically memorizes it.
Well, what I want to know is I don't want to be there ever. Why would anybody else want to hang around and haunt?
Right.
We have our skeptic on our podcast. He says that all the time. He goes, "Listen, if I'm going to be a ghost," he goes, "I'm hanging out on the beach in Hawaii. I'm not, going to some old rundown house and waiting for somebody to show up or something. I'm going somewhere nice, someplace where I've always wanted to be."
Well,
which is funny, but I don't think that's probably how it works.
No, but so I have a story that can kind of tie into that. So you've probably heard of Mackinac Island.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so to get to Mackinac Island, you either have to go from Mackinac City or St. Ignace. There's two boat ferry areas that will take you over there. But it's from Memorial Day to Labor Day. It is nonstop tourists, and it's very, very busy. So this was a couple of years ago, and my mom had come home for her golden school reunion for her class, and she had flown home, and then I was driving her back up. So in the car, it was me and her. I had my miniature pincher who travels everywhere with me. She's also my service dog, and I had her German Shepherd. And at that time, her German Shepherd was pretty young, so she wasn't as well behaved as my Min Pin. So we stopped in Mackinac City, which is where all the fudge shops and everything are, because she wanted to get fudge for her friends up in Minnesota. So while she was doing that, I was doing, the tourist things, taking pictures here and there. And there's one big public restroom that's at the end of, the one side of the tourist shop store. So my miniature pincher is only 7 pounds. So I took her into the bathroom stall with me, and she always sits on my lap while I'm in the stall. So went back to what we were doing, and that was in June. So now I go up to the My Paracon, which is a huge paranormal convention that's up at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. And I went to the whole program that day, and I knew that if I wanted to get, some stuff from, like the fudge and stuff like that from Mackinac City, that Sault Ste. Marie is about an hour, give or take, with the bridge travel time to get back to um, the Lower Peninsula, which is Michigan, which is where Mackinac City is. So I get back into Mackinac City and park my car, and I thought, well, I'm gonna go use the restroom first before I go use, go get any of the fudge shops, because it turned out that they were open till 9, and I was there around like 6:30. So I walk into the restroom, and it's completely empty. Like Mackinac City is dead right now, because it's
Yeah.
after it's Labor Day weekend, and it's completely dead. Nobody's really there. And so I go into the bathroom stall that I had gone into when I had my min pin with me. And just as as I'm about to leave the stall, a voice as clear as any voice I've ever heard says, "What, no puppy this time?"
Whoa.
And I look around and I actually start to answer back, "No, I left her at home." And then I'm like, "Wait." So now I'm looking around the stall like, there's nobody else in this bathroom stall except me. There's nobody else in the restroom, because there were other stalls. There's nobody else in this restroom. And how the hell would they know that I had brought my min pin in here like a couple of months ago?
Well,
So,
I find it appropriate though that happened while you're in the restroom because you probably almost crapped yourself.
well, I have a story that's kind of funny with that one too. Um, so I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I have a friend who runs the ghost tours up on Mackinac Island. And so I'm telling him, he's like, yeah, it's probably ghosts from such and such. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the point. I don't care what ghost it was. It was the fact that they remembered that 3 months before I had my miniature pincher in that exact same stall. And she was well behaved. She sat on my lap, and they were inquiring. They obviously recognized me. They were inquiring as to where the dog was. So that is one of my biggest like actually experienced paranormal um, experiences where it was like, what the hell? You're telling me that you remembered me, not only remembered who I was, but that I had a dog with me, and now the dog's not with me, and the ghost wanted to know where the dog was.
I have to say that trumps the little girl in the post office. You win. You win the prize. You win the prize.
Well, and then my funny story was last year I did the haunted Houghton Heights para convention, which is about 2 hours away from me up in higher part of Michigan, and my roommate was Exie Smith. I don't know if you've ever talked to her, but she's really cool. She's a medium. We were roommates for 2 nights at these cabins, and so um, we were there Friday afternoon at the Clive and Dots Inn, Anchor Inn, where the event was being held, and then we went back and we chatted all night. And so the next morning we drove two separate vehicles. She had hers, I had mine, and I had little Tegan with me. So we both got to the event and weren't really keeping track of each other. Well, I didn't realize she had gone into the restroom. The women's restroom up there is haunted, but it has two stalls. So she had gone in, and I didn't know she was in there. So once again, I go in to the stall, and Tegan's sitting on my lap, and we both hear something in the next stall. Now I thought there was nobody else in there, so Tegan jumps off my lap and she ducks her head underneath the stall wall and starts growling. And poor Etsy, she's like, ah! And she's like, Tegan, don't you ever do that again. And Tegan's now wagging her tail like, I got you. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, I thought it was the ghost. She said, I thought the ghost was reaching its hand underneath the stall wall and
Oh,
was
geez.
trying to grab at me. She's like, because this bathroom's haunted and that ghost does shit like that. So luckily we were both sitting down on the toilets when this happened. I'm like, because it probably scared the shit out of her, and when she reacted to Tegan growling, that's probably, that scared me. So that's kind of my potty room humor, ghost story to tell is the time that Tegan, my little miniature pincher, scared the crap out of both of us.
Oh, that's and it's good that there's a little bit of humor that can be found in in some of those situations, for sure. That's oh boy, yeah, that's a good one. I was waiting for somebody to one of the other of you to say something as if you were the ghost from the
No,
bathroom
no.
before. Now that
Apparently,
would have been.
Tegan was good enough with doing it because, and I didn't know that the bathroom had a resident ghost that haunts it. It wasn't until she told me afterwards. She's like, yeah, that scared the bejesus out of me because she's like, I thought it was reaching underneath the stall door and it was trying to grab at me. And she's a medium. She sees, the spirits and deals with them. And here it was, my little miniature pincher who was just defending me, as part of her, her job, description. But it happened last year, but I still tell, I tell it all the time of how we both got a surprise on that morning.
Now the mailman in me immediately thinks that you then said, "Don't worry, he doesn't bite. He doesn't bite."
Oh no, I tell, she has her service dog patches on her, but I have fibromyalgia, and for some reason people like to grab my arms and squeeze to get my attention, and that really hurts. And so she, as part of her, not only signaling me when I'm going to have a what we call a flash, um, she, tells people to stay away from me. And unfortunately, now people are drawn to her because they think that they can touch her and pet her. And so I openly tell her, growl. And because people they're so stupid sometimes. And it's like, if I had a full-size Doberman, would you be reaching for her? But no, because she's
Well,
like,
on the other end, I feel the same way when a dog is baring its teeth at me
yeah,
as I'm standing 20 feet away, and somebody will say, "It's okay, but he doesn't bite."
right,
And I'm like, "Well, yeah, he doesn't bite you. That's why you have him as a
yeah,
pet. If he bit you, you wouldn't have him as a pet. But I'm going to clue you in. He's going to bite me. It's
right.
happened once."
Oh no, I tell people, no, she's not for petting. She's actually on duty right now, and the reason she's growling at you and being defensive is you are in our space, and she's trying to monitor me, and you're conflicting that. So, but she's only 7 pounds, and I'm glad that she does growl and is defensive towards people, because I've heard too many horror stories of people with small dogs that are service dogs, and people just come up and think that they can, pull their leg or something like that. And I know service dogs that have actually had their legs broken because people
Oh,
have done
geez.
that. And once a service dog experiences something traumatic like that, it's very hard to get them to focus back in on you and to trust the situation. So
Yeah, because they're worried about themselves being hurt more
exactly.
than they're worried
So
about you. Well,
yeah,
once again, why would a ghost be haunting a bath?
and
Like,
that and
is
that's
that the last thing left on the brochure? Like, okay, well, we got two places. We got you, you can
well, I
haunt
know,
this gas station,
I know,
or you can haunt the bath.
yeah, I know that particular location where both of us had been scared in the bathroom, that had been a brothel back in
Oh,
the
okay. All right.
1800s, and over the course of history, it has changed, but now it's like a local bar and grill place, because they have a kitchen and they have a bar, but the upstairs of it is where, the women used to stay. And then apparently there is a tunnel that goes underneath of it and would go out to the lakeshore, and that's where they would come up and make deliveries of, liquor when it was banned and stuff like that. So it has a very rich history, but they do think that, there were some occasions where maybe some shady stuff went on, and as a result of it, there are ghosts that actually haunt there, and it's a perfect place to do, a paranormal ghost hunting or paracon. But it is a little bit small on the inside. We had a pretty good turnout last year, but that's the reason why there's ghosts at that location. And then the restroom that's in Mackinac City, it's not too far from some of the storefronts that have a history of paranormal activity. And so I think in that case, what happens is it's an intelligent haunt, obviously, because it recognized me
from
talking
to you. And,
but I think that the spirits in that location in Mackinac City, I think they watch for people. And when there's a lack of tourists and a lack of people, then they kind of pursue, the tourists and are like, hey, give us some interaction.
Well, and it goes back to some of the stuff I've heard that if you're how you were in your human form is probably how you're going to be in your spirit form. You're not going to change personalities. And if you're somebody who is very personable and likes to interact with people and you don't have anybody coming around, you're right. You're going to be like, hey, there's somebody I can talk to.
Right.
And, and then he's probably like, just ask about the dog. I didn't mean to scare her off. just trying to be nice. Because you do wonder, like, do they realize that they're not really there?
Right.
And
right.
And it's obvious that sometimes they don't. I don't think they do.
And it caught me so off guard because I was actually responding back to it before and then the realization hit me. There's nobody else in this bathroom, and it's a brick building, so it's not like somebody on the outside had recognized me and was saying, hey, where's the puppy at? No, there was nobody outside the building either, so it was like,
well, not just that, if it was a male voice, would you wonder, like, what's the guy doing in the women's bathroom?
Yeah, and it was, it was hard to tell if it was a male or a female voice.
Okay.
Because it didn't really register as either. But the thing that was surprising to me was that they asked the question, "Where's the puppy at?" And I'm like, "She's at home." And then I'm like, "Wait a minute, how did you know that I had my dog in this exact same bathroom stall 3 months ago?" And then it's like, "Whoa." Okay, I have got to tell my friends.
For a regular living, breathing person to remember that from 3 months ago would be something too,
right?
In and of itself,
especially
if it wasn't anybody that you didn't like have a conversation with,
right?
Or just somebody to be there, and it'd be like that'd be strange for somebody that alive to remember and ask you about,
right? And especially in that that little tourist area because. Thousands of people come there every week, during the summertime, during the warmer months to, go into the tourist shops and then go over to Mackinac Island. So it was like for them to remember me and then, remember that I had a dog and now I don't have a dog. That was really, that will always be one of my top, paranormal experiences.
I would say. Like I don't know how that really gets topped as far as like a ghost interaction. I mean that's something else, right?
But there. I do have another story because I know one of your podcast hosts. This was about 2 years ago. We were both staying at a mutual friend's house because we were all going to the Mothman Festival. And he has Bigfoot activity around his house, but his cabin is also haunted. And the first night that we were there, everything was cool, and we were all kind of like roommates in a dormitory because the upstairs of the cabin is quite open, and there's beds in different areas. So the first night there was a lady who was also in the area that I was in, and everything was quiet that night. And then the second night, we had all been to the Mothman Festival all day long. Everybody's tired, so we're all going to bed, and there was a rocking chair sitting in between my bed and the other bed. And then the lady who's on your podcast and her mom were in another section. So a couple hours after we've all gone to bed, I had put my stuff on the rocking chair, and in my bag at the top of it was my bottle of ibuprofen. So I had my back to the rocking chair, and all of a sudden I hear the pill bottle rattling back and forth. Now I assumed that it was the other two ladies, and they were getting their medication, and I didn't want to disturb them. But I know what I heard because my little miniature pinscher, Tegan, started growling at it. And about that same time, I started getting that real icy feeling that you get when you know something weird is happening, like paranormal. And so I'm thinking that it was them, but I'm also kind of like, what if it's not them? And so the rattling happened a couple more times. So the next morning, we were all, getting ready to leave and everything. And I said, I'm I'm sorry if you guys were sick last night. I didn't want to bother you and make you feel awkward or anything. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I heard one of you get up and you were getting, medication out of a bottle. And they said, no, we didn't get up, but we heard that. We thought it was you. And I said, I thought it was you guys. And so whatever's haunting the cabin had been playing with my pill bottle. And that was the icy, weird feeling that I felt against my back. And meanwhile, I'm holding my little miniature pinscher close to me, like, don't you leave, don't you go anywhere, because if it grabs you, I don't know what I'll do. And so, but she was reacting to it too and growling at it. So it was would be my second paranormal story that I would say is up there, because all four of us heard it, but I thought it was them and they thought it was me, and when in reality it was the ghost that was shaking the pill bottle back and forth.
Well, that cinches it right there for me, because she's asked all of us to, hey, come on down and check the place out, and now that I know that, I think I'll just pass. Because I had no idea. That's the other cool thing you kind of find out. Everybody kind of knows everybody. I had no idea that you knew her at all. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we met a couple years ago, and then we've been at a couple of events, and I helped her get into a couple of events, but unfortunately, it looks like at least one of them has been postponed for this year. Not quite sure about the other one, so my fingers are crossed that one will actually still go on, and we can all attend and have a nice turnout.
Yeah, she was super excited to get to go do some of those, so I'm hoping they work out for her. So, but I get on her, I'm like, I go, we could barely get you to talk on the podcast. How are you able to go and talk to people up in front of, you can do a presentation up in front of a bunch of people? So she's a cool girl.
Yeah, she did a presentation last year on Bigfoot, and it went really, really well. But the key is to have a PowerPoint, because then you can work off of a PowerPoint, and it keeps you on track. So.
Yes, I gotcha. Yeah, although I guess that must be the reason nobody's asked me to come present anything, because they know I will be so far off track. No matter what. no matter what.
Well, once you learn how
PowerPoint
to
or not.
once you learn how to do a PowerPoint, it's like, oh, this is so nice. Now I'm not going off on a tangent on something else, and people are looking at me like, why are you talking about that when when we thought you were going to, do a presentation on this? So, I like my PowerPoints now.
Well, okay, so I know the secret. It's all about the PowerPoint.
And for me, what works out is 30 PowerPoint slides usually fills about an hour's worth of presentation. So that's my rule of thumb that I work by.
All right.
So that's
I'm
just a
taking notes.
tip. That's a tip
notes,
for you.
just in case anybody gets really desperate for entertainment or a speaker. I know what to come with.
Everybody listening is probably out there going, okay, 30 slides, 60 minutes, good. Yeah, taking notes. Well, we are coming up on about an hour and 25 minutes. So, is there?
And I didn't even have PowerPoint slides. Holy moly!
I know. Imagine how that works so well. Are there any events or anything that you want to talk about? I know you have your book series coming out, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in January, I think we released. I don't know how much of the backstory anybody cares about, but like I said, I've written some scripts and stuff like that, and I got to know one of our mutual friends, John Kuykendall.
Yes.
And he was talking about a series that he has coming out on the Travel Channel, and we kind of talked about how he was interested in maybe a fictionalized X-Files type of show to pitch to the Travel Channel that maybe dealt with Bigfoot a little bit more.
Okay.
And of course, because I can't just hear something and not think about something, I said, well, I got an idea. And so I kind of pitched him the idea, and he's like, hey, write that up. Write that up as a pitch. And so I went ahead and I wrote it up as a pitch, and he said, well, why don't you write like the first 10 pages in script form, so they could see. So I started the first 10 pages. He says, man, you want to finish this? And I think I can make this into a book. Now, I thought he was crazy to want to publish a book as a script, okay? Because people that don't normally see that stuff may not. I was always of the mind, well, how are they going to figure? Because a script is a lot less descriptive than a book.
Right.
You kind of write it so that the director, he kind of colors in the stuff how he sees it, as opposed to writing a book and telling you what color the sky was, or what color the guy's shirt was, or what kind of car really, the real details that make 500 pages worth of book,
right,
versus a 50 to 100 page script. Well, he said, no, listen, I think it'll be great. It'll be, I think people will really dig it. And, the story that you've got, I think it'll be really well received. And I hate to admit it, but I was wrong and he was right. People seem to really like it. It's been really well received. So it's called From the Shadows, Volume 1. Because what I'm going to do then is each story, I think I've got about 10 or 12 mapped out, and it's just going to be there's a couple, 2 or 3 central figures in this story that, much like the X-Files, and I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you've got to know what the X-Files is.
I would hope
if
so.
If you don't, then stop and go watch all 9 or 10 seasons. But so it's kind of there's a lot of action. There's a lot of adventure that goes along with the action, a lot of mystery, and it kind of, there's a storyline in the background, much the same way the X-Files, except it's not the alien hybrid. There's other stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
and you get to visit all of everybody's favorite cryptids along the way, as these people try to put these pieces together and figure out what is really going on in the world that we think of what's really going on in the background of the world, and how long is this conspiracy to keep all of us regular people in the dark, and why are they keeping it in the dark? The stuff everybody thinks now anyway, that we're not being told the whole truth about everything. So yeah, the first volume came out in January. Second volume's going to come out at the end of April. Third volume is, so every 2 or 3 months there'll be another volume.
Okay.
It's not heavy reading because they're in script form. So you get the book and it'll be just like you're reading a script. Everybody that has read it so far, that has left reviews or contacted me, they really seem to they enjoy it because it reminds them of the X-Files. If you can't tell, I like to put a little humor in every now and then, and I gotta say, I was inspired by some of the people we've talked to on the podcast, and taken what I believe. It's basically, I'm just going to say, it's what my personal belief is what maybe Sasquatch and Bigfoot really is. Not to give too much away, but to maybe make you want to say, maybe I want to see what he thinks. Not many people want to see what I think, but maybe if you're really interested enough. But like I said, there's other trips along the way that I think would be worth taking. You're going to get some other cool storylines and kind of explore some different cryptids, and then kind of the cool thing I did is I've incorporated a lot of familiar stuff, especially to people from our area. There might be some familiar names, some familiar towns, some familiar streets, roads, stuff like that. So I've kind of done that to kind of make it in the local sense. It's a little more to have some more ownership of the stories. But I figure, hey, if you're going to do it, let's have some fun with it. Let's have some fun with it. So I don't know what it holds. But like I said, I probably got 10 or 12 worth of stories that we're going to put together, and then who knows, maybe if we're lucky, it'll be a Netflix series. I don't know. The crazier things that happen. You had somebody ask you where the dog was.
Yeah.
In the bathroom. So, but and it's the book's available on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, every place that you can buy books. You can order it. If people want an autographed copy of it, they can find me on Facebook. They can find us through like our From the Shadows podcast page. We have a forum called After the Shadows where people get on, and it seems to be the thing where you got the Facebook page, but then you got the forum page where everybody gets on and it talks about stuff, and there's a lot more freedom for people to post their own, like, Bigfoot thing or ghost thing, something funny. And we have an Instagram page. I have an Instagram page. So there's a lot of ways to get a hold of me if they do want an autographed copy, and they can find out about that. But yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to hear more stories, after they listen to your podcast, they can come check us out every Friday. We have a new podcast, and Wednesdays we do something kind of cool called the Midweek Howl. We have one of our skeptic that I mentioned. He goes by the name of the Ozark Howl, and he lives out in the Ozarks. He's a very interesting dude. He was a sheriff's deputy, a highway patrolman, Homeland Security, and air marshal. Okay. Oh, wow. So he is super skeptical of everything. However, he's one of the greatest storytellers I've ever met. And so he did a couple episodes where he just told stories about, you know, what happened when he was a sheriff's deputy or a highway patrolman, and people loved it. I mean, I dare you to listen and not die laughing. And so we kind of made miniature episodes every Wednesday of about 5 or 10 minutes, just to kind of give people something to laugh about. You know, as a matter of fact, last week our one was about what's going on right now with the coronavirus, and it's pretty good. He tells some really good stories about what's going on, you know, out there in the Ozarks, and so we kind of do. In fact, in an upcoming episode, we're going to interview Tom Downey, who's an actor who I know through some acting stuff, who was in the Beast of Bray Road movie about the original Dogman sighting. So we're going to talk to him about, you know, the movies he's in. Does kind of they're all like have a supernatural cryptid type of feel to them, and so we kind of want to get his take on what he believes in from the movies he's been in. You know, does he really believe there's a Dogman after, you know, being in a movie about Dogman and being chased by one in the movie? You know, so we kind of like to explore different things when it comes to that. So.
Okay, it sounds like a very interesting book series, and I will have to definitely check out your podcast and your mini podcast on Wednesday nights. I
guarantee the Wednesday ones are worth the 10 minutes. I mean, what else are you going to do for 10 minutes?
Right.
What else? I mean, come on. Nobody can spare 10 minutes? I mean, come on. But, yeah, we invite everybody to come check them out and, you know, tell us if you think they stink. I mean, okay, they stink. You know. But you'll be in the minority. I'm just telling. No, I'm really glad that I got to, you know, spend some time talking to you without the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
But like I said, if anybody wants to check us out, you know, From the Shadows podcast, or they can, you know, find me, Shane Grove, on Facebook, on Instagram, and you know, you do get the book and like it, let us know. You know, we appreciate it. You know,
well, I want to,
as you know, it's a lot of hard work and any kind of positive feedback.
Oh yeah,
that's about the only pay we get out of this.
Yeah,
positive feedback. So it's all appreciated.
Oh, no problem. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show today, and I wish you luck with your new book series and your podcast, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you, and stay safe.
Oh yes, Everybody out there, better safe than sorry. Keep that 6 foot, bubble around you.
That's right. Unless they're a ghost.
Yeah.
Then you can't. There's no.
Well, thank you again, and it's been a pleasure, and signing off for now and saying goodbye.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.